Good day, Africa and the world. Thank you immensely for joining us on this midday newscast over For You Television. To kick off, we take you to the Central African Republic, where Honorable Evariste Ngamana, the first Vice President of the National Assembly, welcomed on Sunday, October 9, 2022 at Bangui Poko Airport, a delegation of Belgian parliamentarians by the East Deputy Van Hoof on an inter-parliamentary mission of 4 days on the Central African soil. The rest of the story is with you, Futso.
Invited by the President of the Central African Parliament, Simplice Mathieu Sarangi, Mr. Van Hoof and her retinue composed of the Deputy Hoslem Ozant, the Senator Philippe Courard and the parliamentary official Michael Van Den Nes came to seal the links between the two interparliamentary friendship groups, Belgium, Central African Republic, set up in June 2022. The objectives, among others assigned to this Belgian delegation, is the identification of levels for cooperation and solidarity between the parliamentary institution of the CAR and Belgium. It should be noted that the stay of these distinguished guests provides for field visit from this Sunday, October 9, in the town halls of the 5th and 9th subdivisions of the capital, will follow the days to come the audience with the President of the National Assembly, the meeting with the members of the Interparliamentary Friendship Group of the Central African Republic, the discussion workshop, to name but a few activities. Note that the Interparliamentary Friendship Group of the Central African Republic has as its president the Honorable Ernest Kongeri, the Deputy Molo Madaon is the Vice President, and the Deputy Thomas Rabe, the rapporteur.
We move away from the Central African Republic to stay in Central Africa, where we are now talking about Chad. Chad's Transitional or National Forum announced Saturday that Mahamat Idris Deby Itno, who took over April last year after his father's demise, would remain in power during the 2-year transition to elections. At the ceremony boycotted by opposition members, leading armed rebel groups and civil society organizations, the Transitional Military Council, which had ruled the country for the past 18 months, was finally dissolved, despite calls urging the 38-year-old general not to extend the transition and not to run for president in upcoming elections. The forum, amongst a raft of resolutions adopted under a revised transition charter, ratified Deby's right to vie for the presidency after the transition. Away from Central Africa, we now talk a disaster that took place in the West African nation of Nigeria, where at least 76 people have been reported dead following a boat accident in Nigeria's southeastern state of Anambra. The boat, which was carrying at least 80 people, capsized on Friday in Ogbaru area in Anambra State. Most of the victims were women and children trying to reach safety after their community had been inundated by flood water. President Muhammadu Buhari of the Western African nation offered his condolences to the families of the victims in the tragic accident. He also ordered a review of safety measures across the country's water transport system and said emergency services must do everything to account for those missing. We are now in the Horn of Africa, where we are talking the Ethiopian Tigray crisis, where at least 5 people were killed and 37 were wounded during an airstrike in Ethiopia's Tigray or northern Tigray region, medics revealed over the weekend. This comes after an African Union-led mediated peace process to take place in South Africa over the weekend was postponed due to logistical challenges. The rest of the story is in the following reports. Less than a week after the Ethiopian government agreed an invitation from the African Union to take part in a mediated peace process, calamities once again befell the people of Tigray. At least 5 people were killed and 37 were wounded during an airstrike in Ethiopia's northern region, medics revealed over the weekend. The drone attack hit the town of Dangolat, 30 kilometers from Mekelle, the capital of Tigray. Kibrom Gebre Selassie, director of the hospital that received the victims, said on Twitter. According to him, the hospital received 42 victims and 5 have been confirmed dead. At least 50 people were killed on Tuesday in an airstrike that hit a school in Tigray that was sheltering people displaced by the conflict, aid workers and Tigrayan forces said. Last month, 10 people were killed in twin drone attacks on a residential neighborhood in Mekelle. The region has been target of several airstrikes since fighting resumed in late August between the Ethiopian government and the Allied forces and the Tigray People Liberation Front. The return to combat shattered the March truce and dashed hopes of peacefully resolving the war, which has triggered a humanitarian crisis in the northern part. Both sides have accused each other of firing first. Fighting has spread from southern Tigray to other fronts farther north and west, while drawing in Eritrean troops who backed government forces in the early phases of the war. We are now in the northern part of the African continent, where French Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne has arrived in Algeria on a 2-day working visit aimed at improving ties with the former French colony, a major gas exporter. Ms. Borne's delegation includes 16 ministers, more than a third of her government. She is expected to sign deals on economic cooperation in the northern African nation. Ties between the two nations sought last year after French President Emmanuel Macron questioned Algeria's existence as a nation before the French occupation. Relations were restored when French President Emmanuel Macron visited the country in August. Central, West, Northern Africa, and now Southern Africa. We are now in South Africa. Former President Jacob Zuma of the Southern African country has been freed following an expiry of his prison sentence for contempt of court, the government said on Friday. This comes after several petitions made by his lawyers. Take a listen to this report. It's official. His Excellency President Zuma is now a free man, the Jacob Zuma Foundation said in a Twitter. Former South African President Jacob Zuma has been freed following an expiry of his prison sentence for contempt of court, the government said on Friday. Zuma received a 15-month sentence in 2021 after he ignored instructions to participate in the corruption inquiry. He handed himself in on July 7 last year to begin his sentence, triggering the worst violence South Africa has seen in years as his angry supporters took to the streets. In September 2021, Zuma was released on medical parole, but in December, the High Court set aside the parole decision and ordered him to return to jail. Zuma appealed the ruling and remained on parole pending the appeal outcome. His appeal had not been determined at the time his sentence had expired. Mr. Zuma complied with his conditions for medical parole as set out during his placement, the Department of Correctional Services said in a statement. The statement added, all administrative processes have now been concluded and his sentence expiry date marks end of him serving his sentence on the community corrections. It's with a report on South Africa that will put a full stop to this midday newscast over for you television. I have been Jix Napase for presentation. Do have a great day in company of our programs.